is significant in an overall sense is the broad attempt of this government to fold caste politics into communal politics.
To pretend that this is only the fringe elements. It is not the fringe elements. It is the center of their ideology.
At the heart of the Hindutva enterprise is the sustaining of the marriage and family system, and anything that challenges that will also upset the entire structure of caste and the reproduction of caste.
As Modi intones Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, behind him the Hindutva goons chant बेटी बचाओ बहुला.
बड़ा ही जिसको कहते हैं सटल परिवर्तन, चेंज, इंस्टीट्यूशनल आर्किटेक्चर जो इस लोकतंत्र का था उसमें किया जा रहा है.
जनतंत्र को अब नए शिक्षा संस्थानों की आवश्यकता नहीं है.
So there is a tacit support for excessive use of power by arms of the state.
It is the individual, the poor, the middle class, the other activist who's under tremendous pressure.
And that's why they are using this instrument of FCRA and income tax and RBI to achieve that goal.
The domain of politics in India has shrunk so dramatically in the last 1 year that along with the shrinking, we see a shrinking of the idea of India.
The seeds of what we need, the resistance to violence, the resistance to bitterness and hatred can come only from the ordinary people.
It has gone in for reducing rural development expenditures and social sector expenditures very, very drastically.
Over the last 1 year, the government's own assessment is there has been an increase in the rate of farmer suicides.
This overall crisis in Indian agriculture and a government which is very little committed to addressing or reversing any of these is the context.
क्योंकि हम पिछले 1 साल की बात कर रहे हैं, पिछले 1 साल में क्या हुआ, तो थोड़ा हम लोग इसी पे डिस्कस करेंगे कि किस तरह से ये इंस्टीट्यूशनल सपोर्ट जो है वो कैसे असरअंदाज हुआ.
Very soon the process of completely controlling pedagogy in education, all discourse on culture, all discourse on diversity and pluralism, spirituality, religious tolerance, food, clothing, everything in this country will very soon be under the control.
A lot of decisions are being announced without debate, without any consultations, not even announced up front, but we hear of them from an address somewhere, a convocation somewhere, and suddenly they become policy decisions.
The Modi government's first budget, first presented in August and then of course in February of this year, has clearly not delivered the Achhe Din for education.
If you look at the last 1 year, the whole thing of transparency and accountability has been kind of systematically dismantled by this government.
20% cut in the budget actually is a very significant cut.
It is this dilution that we are talking about, which is directly subsidizing capital against the interest of the people, against the natural resources that exist, against generations in the future.
There is no doubt in my mind that Modi has decided, as far as the emerging security and strategic situation in Asia is concerned, that he needs to strengthen and deepen or double down, to use Shiv Shankar Menon's phrase, the strategic partnership with the United States.
Looking at the foreign policy of President Govt, one has to go back to the roots of foreign policy in order to be able to assist. And the roots go back to Jawaharlal.
President Obama, and despite these high-level, big growth, development-oriented meetings, didn't leave Delhi without reminding the government about religious tolerance, which was taken up again by Obama at the breakfast meeting in Washington.
How, I would say, a distortion of history takes place for very immediate political ends.
Mythifying history is the essential component of the vision of history writing.
Access to justice, which might be possible, has been effectively blocked either by law or by policy.
Why, with the change of a political regime, do court cases
either change direction or come to a grinding halt.
Today, we have institutional frameworks in which the head of the executive and the head of the judiciary will be sitting at the same table and selecting so-called eminent members, and they will also be selecting the judges who come in the future.
First time in the history of the Indian Science Congress that you saw the political leadership actually committing itself on, rather than to the method of science, but to the mumbo jumbo.
Modi government's push for development and industrialization when they are not putting any emphasis on scholarship.
That the way for the economy to move forward is a way which is the very opposite of what the current government is planning to do.
The government of India has in the last 1 year dismantled the planning commission without telling us what it is going to be replaced.
The economy in India has been in crisis quite some time.
In this new fiscal architecture, we definitely are now trying to just protect the allocations for social sectors overall, whereas the country needed to step up the allocations for social sectors.
If you look at government expenditure on health and education, India spends less than 5% of the GDP on these sectors. This is lower than what even Nepal, our very poor neighbor, is spending. It's more than 6%, actually 6.7%.
I think there is going to be consequences of some of these cuts in ways that we probably will only realize a little later.
How it has, in more ways than one, helped Narendra Modi and the way he has used the media to build his image.
In this case, it was no surprise that the media was crawling right from the beginning. I think this was inherent in the kind of structure we've constructed for ourselves.
It was a very important step in the direction of dismantling the idea of India that has been prevalent during the freedom struggle and after 1947.